What's going on, everybody? It is Cam here, Easy Work Acres, and today we are going to do a follow-up on our worm buckets. It's one of the very first videos we added on our channel, was creating buckets for gathering worms to our garden, and I want to show you the results of what we got just since January when we put these in. So we got our bucket here in the ground. I'm gonna go ahead and pop the lid off of here, and look at that. Just like some really good dark, like broken down good stuff here, and you can see the holes of the bucket. So there was stuff filled all the way up to this line where it's like clean all around the top, and it covered all these holes. And they basically just like over the last couple of months, which this was probably done a little while ago, but even though it was, you know, a couple months ago, I think this bucket was done quite a while back. There's still some worms in here though, so I kind of wanted to show you what we got going on here. Try and dig some of this up, but I mean, we got like some nice big fat boys in there, like all kinds of them. So like that was kind of the goal with this. And like, look at this stuff. Like, it is nice and moist. It breaks up. It's real pretty. There's all kinds of worms in it and everything. I mean, that is going to be awesome for throwing on our garden and amending the soil as we go, which is exactly what we were going for. So when we very first started with this garden and prepping it, which there's a video start to finish on how we got it prepped during the fall. And when we were digging down, one, the soil was super compacted, probably from excavation and then row cropping beforehand before we moved out here. But two is you'd put your shovel in the ground and there would be nothing, like no worms, no nothing, just real hard ground and no like bugs of any sort. So we wanted to throw these in here to try and attract some worms to our garden. And now when you stick a shovel in the ground anywhere out here around the garden, there are worms all over the place. Now that's obviously some from the buckets, but some from just simply prepping with so much wood chip and horse manure that we laid down all over the place. But these worm buckets, both of them, because we have another one right here, right in the center of our raised bed, and it is just like this one. It's pretty much done. It's time to reset it and put some new stuff in. So if you remember, if you got to watch the first video, which like I said, I'll put a link to the whole thing on making these buckets. But you know, we basically filled this thing up like compost. So I'm gonna run the reel real quick on that last video as far as like what we put in here, so you can kind of see all the different materials we actually put in here. And then obviously what you can see it is now, which is gonna be great stuff to amend our soil with. So one of the main things with the worm bins is it basically follows the same rule of like a compost bin. You want to make sure there's browns and greens that you're adding in, because you don't want to create like this anaerobic environment where it's like smelling bad. And I've made this mistake before. At our previous house, I started a compost bin and I threw in a bunch of grass clippings where were just fresh green, added too much, and it just smelled absolutely terrible. It seemed like my compost pile was like rotting. So same rules apply for the compost bin. So you can add newspaper here. I basically just brought this out here as like an example, but I have leaves all right here. So basically I'm just gonna add a bunch of leaves to the bucket, and that will be my browns. Like, so these are dried leaves, obviously. It's well into January, fall happened a long time ago. So adding in some of that, I'm going to add in some of this manure, pretty much anything you would add to a compost bin. And you wanna treat it that way all the way through this bucket's life cycle. So you're checking this thing regularly. One of the things that I've watched on this, and like I said, I got this idea from a YouTube video. So one of the things that was mentioned in several of the videos is checking this pretty regularly to make sure that it stays wet inside. So you don't want it soaking wet, but you don't want it to dry out, because worms need moisture to be able to survive or even be in here. Along with like all this composting material, like this is just like literally table scraps. Like this is from a spaghetti squash. You can throw all this stuff in here. What you don't want to throw in is any type of meat product, dairy product, anything that's really oily or anything like that. And something else that is helpful specifically for the worms is just like chickens, grit, like eggshells, are very helpful for their digestive. It's like it helps them digest the food. So all of these scraps, that's a whole onion, but we're gonna throw it in anyways. We have a lot of eggs and things like that, so I'll be crushing up eggshells and adding that to this material as well. So that's all there is to it, is adding in this material, greens, browns, some kind of grit, and you want to continue adding that stuff every time you're checking it. So like when it's starting to work its way down, the worms have like knocked out an entire bucket, and you get all your worm castings out, you keep amending it with more grit, more browns, more greens, not just only adding your table scraps, because you don't want it to become just nasty, bad smelling stuff that the worms can't work with. So as you can see, there is basically, you know, just stuff like a compost bin in these worm buckets, you know, newspaper for some browns, some table scraps, things like that. And I think I even mixed in a little bit of soil. I added some soil in, and not great soil. It was just like, you know, some dirt that I found around the nearby or whatever, just to give a little medium for the worms to get in the buckets a little more easily. But overall, they ended up breaking it all the way down to that stuff that you just seen, that black gold, those worm castings that we can now use to amend our raised beds. We can amend it around our in-ground beds if we want to, but I'm also looking forward to being able to use it in pots for indoor growing throughout the winter time and stuff. If we would like to grow indoors under lights or anything like that, we have some good worm castings to add to those pots and stuff throughout the winter time and everything. And you can do the same thing. This is a great way for you to harvest your own worms and then harvest your own worm castings from those worms without having to buy anything online. These are all local worms that were already here. We just attracted them to our area with these buckets. So definitely give this a shot. Check out the video on how to make them. It's very simple. It's very easy to get them in the ground, the right depth and all of that stuff, and then what to fill them with. And then you can get one of these in the ground yourself. So that's all I got for you. Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Please like and subscribe to our channel. We would love to continue sharing what we can with you and what's working for us. This is our first successful garden this year, and we're pretty pumped about it. And we'll be sharing with you all the preparations we did with that as well. So you all have a good one, and see you in the next video.